Welcome. You know the drill by now. We're going to be diving back into the trial transcripts. We are on part 8. The last one had Angelo Russo's testimony. Today we'll be starting with Sergeant Adam McQuaid. He's one of the several experts that did an analysis of the EDR. And I know some people are asking me to post a link for the trial transcripts so they could follow along. I did figure out how to do that, and it's under my Patreon. My Patreon is the same name as I have here, Facts Be Feelings. So if you want to check that out, the links for those should be on my Patreon. They should be up there for free. There shouldn't be any type of payment option or membership required to view them. So if you want to view them, check them out there. So diving into the transcripts, Adam McQuaid is one of the people that took a look at the EDR and did an analysis on it. He is part of the Southwest Accident Group, and this page is just saying how he's a coordinator and taking over as unit commander. The defense is stipulating that he is an expert in crash reconstruction and EDR analysis. So I don't know if I've discussed that previously, but normally you'll see in a trial how they'll ask an expert a bunch of questions on their background and their experience in order to get them labeled as an expert witness. But what we've seen a lot of in this case is the defense just stipulating to them being experts. The judge just verifies that with Mr. McDonald that they are stipulating that he is an expert in those areas. Okay. Prosecution questioning. Question. What does an event data recorder analyst do? Answer. An event data recorder analyst will take a computer data file that's retrieved from a vehicle that has been involved in a crash. They will obtain that data file and interpret it to determine what was going on with the vehicle at the time of, and depending on the make and model of the car, up to some seconds before. Each vehicle is different as to how many seconds before it will capture as to what the vehicle was doing. Question. Okay, and at some point were you contacted by Strongsville Police Department and asked to review data taken from an event data recorder taken from a 2018 Toyota Camry involved in a double fatality? Answer. Yes, I was. Question. Did you, in fact, conduct analysis of that information? Answer. I did. Question. Okay, when you are contacted by the agency, what is the first thing that you do in your portion of this investigation? Answer. The first thing that I do is I review the data file that was retrieved from the vehicle to make sure that it was a complete recording. And that way you can, if it was not complete, You can't use the information to determine any sort of information from it. From there, I make sure that the data was recorded lines up with the evidence that I see from the photographs of the vehicle itself. Question: how were you able to tell if the data is complete so that you know it is appropriate to provide with your analysis? Answer: it will be listed as complete in the computer file itself. Question: and did you find that the data in this case was complete? Answer: yes. And then he approaches the witness and provides Exhibit 31. Would you look at this and identify it, please? Question: I've marked this as Exhibit 31. Would you look at it and identify it, please? Answer: yes, this is the CDR file that I was provided. Question: what is it taken from? Answer: this is taken from a 2018 Toyota Camry. Question: is this the information that you use to then generate your findings and conclusions? Answer: yes. Question: once you get this data and you have concluded that the report is complete, what is the next step that you take? Answer: the next step that I take is to make sure that the keystrokes match the so that the way all of the information that I'm using is from the same engine cycle, so I'm not pulling. In theory, it can record multiple events from multiple engine cycles. In this case, I only took from one engine cycle. The engine was turned on, the events occurred, the engine was turned off. I didn't take anything outside of that. Question: did you ultimately reach conclusions in this investigation? Answer: yes. Question: did you memorialize your conclusions in a report? Answer: yes. Question: and did you also, in that report, contain information about the steps that you were taking in your investigation? Answer: yes. Question: would it assist in your testimony to be able to refer to your report? Answer: yes. And then he approaches the witness and question: this is Exhibit 32. Would you please identify that for the record? Okay, so I guess real quick, I will show what Exhibit 31 is. This is the CDR file that he was talking to, the crash data retrieval, and it's 57 pages, so I'm not going to flip through all of it, but just go through a little bit to show you. It's the EDR report, and it's what they're going to look at and break down to see what events happened where. We've seen like condensed versions of these in some of the other reports because like I said, this is 57 pages and shows a lot of information, like when the airbags were deployed, all that stuff. And the experts are the ones who, are going to look at this and say which event happened when. And also to point out, I see a lot of people that kind of dispute what this information says or try to say, oh, it's one guy's opinion. And it's not one guy's opinion. There were two different unaffiliated entities that looked at this information, SWIG and Ohio State Patrol. I could be wrong on the second one. And either that or it was a Strongsville police. But between the EDR and the crash reconstruction and the forensic exam from each entity, there was two. There was the person who did it and it was peer reviewed, like from SWIG and from the other one. So there were at least four people that looked at this and two from two different, non-related businesses that came to the same conclusions. When people try to argue that this information shouldn't be trusted or this or that, it's like four experts looked at this from two different companies and they all came to the same conclusions. Like that's what the experts are literally there for in the trial, to tell you these things. Like just because we have Google and all this stuff doesn't mean we know more than they do. Like we just don't. Okay. And that's what you do in a trial. You look at the experts and what they have come up with and evaluate their credibility, and that's how you decide a case. And I did do a video about the whole seatbelt thing because I know on here it says that the seatbelt's engaged, and from what everyone has been told by the prosecutor, by all the documentaries, that Mackenzie was wearing her seatbelt, but nobody else was, and that is true. Dominic had his seatbelt clicked in, but he was sitting on it. That would be why the EDR shows that it's engaged, even though he still wasn't wearing a seatbelt. So both things still are true. I think I have a short video, like a short, that shows that because they show how the seatbelt was cut in the car. And on, I believe, the autopsy report, it also talks about that as well. Back to the transcripts. So that should be Exhibit 31. And then question, this is Exhibit 32. Would you please identify that for the record? Answer, this is my EDR analysis report that I provided based on the computer file that I was given. Question, is that exhibit on the witness stand the one that I am displaying in the courtroom? Answer, yes. Question, what is on the first page? Answer, that is the cover page of my report to include the report number from from Strongsville and my personal information. So let me pull that up. This should be the report he is talking about here. Okay, and question, what is on the next page? Answer, the next page starts with an introduction about the fact that I was asked by Strongsville Police to assist with a fatal crash that occurred on July 31st, 2022. Question, does it include the various materials that you used to conduct your analysis? Answer, yes. Question, what materials did you review in your investigation? Answer, I reviewed the initial crash report written by Patrolman Galassi, the scene diagram that was drawn, the Bosch CDR retrieval, which we just spoke about, the EDR analysis that was previously done by Sergeant Fox from Ohio State Highway Patrol, the scene photos, the vehicle pictures, and the Strongsville police report, as well as email correspondence from one of my instructors regarding the analysis. I believe I also pulled up all the documents relevant here, if I got it correct. So the crash report, I believe, is this one here, where it's just going to go over everything and show kind of a trajectory of the car, how it went. This is where it finally leaves the road at the end of the road right by the stop sign, and has the narrative on 7/31/2022 at 6:15 hours. SPD received a call of a car versus building MVA at the intersection of Progress and Alameda Drive. When officers arrived on scene, we located Unit 1, which had struck the corner of the building at the address of 11792 Alameda Drive. Unit 1 appeared to have traveled westbound on Progress Drive, was driving reckless in excess of the speed limit, with speeds estimated at around 90 miles per hour. Unit 1 did not appear to brake, and it veered off the roadway. It failed to stop at the stop sign of the intersection of Progress and Alameda Drive. Unit 1 drove through the grass, crashed through the sign at 11792 Alameda Drive, then struck the corner of the building at this address. When the front end struck the corner of the building, it split the vehicle almost in half, and the vehicle came to a final rest about 15 feet away from the corner of the building. Invest added for more information. It goes into each of the victims and how they were found, and see how it says safety equipment used for Dom is 1, none used. He did not have his seatbelt on. The seatbelt was engaged, but he was sitting on top of it. And it also has like the conditions: daylight, clear, weather, it wasn't raining, anything like that. Then there is this diagram, which if you've seen some of my other videos, you've probably seen it in there because I include it in quite a bit of them because it shows the vehicle's trajectory. There are some YouTube videos out there that try to claim her trajectory was different and that she went up and then went over as if she was, trying to avoid, but no, she did not do that. This is where the stop sign is, right here, and she left the road right before that. And as she leaves the road here, she is lined up perfectly with the sign, which is right here, and the building, which is right here. And well, the building goes from both ways because that building is very big. And like they say in the appeal documents, in some of the responses in the appeal, that the hard turning event happened, 1.1 second before impact, which I'm sure we'll get into in a minute. So with the steering, it doesn't matter if one of the boys grabbed the wheel or not, because at that point, she's on a trajectory to hit the building. She's going to hit the building no matter which way the wheel is turned, especially with how fast they were going. Like she was going to hit the building no matter what way the wheel was turned. So even the blaming of the boys that they could have grabbed the wheel. And let me ask you something. If you're in a car with someone and they're driving recklessly, or, they try to carjack you and aren't in the car with you, and they're driving recklessly and about to crash, and you grab the wheel and turn it to avoid the crash and maybe crash into something else, is it now your fault because you grabbed the wheel trying to avoid crashing into something? Or is it the person's fault who put you in that position to begin with? Because I don't get why people sit there and argue that if one of the boys grabbed the wheel, it makes it their fault. They're trying to avoid crashing into a building. It's not their fault. They aren't the ones that put themselves in that situation. And like I said, it's a moot point because they were going to hit the building regardless. So this was the other report he's talking about, which is the crash reconstruction and analysis done by Ohio State Highway Patrol. And then this was the other police report or incident report I found that was done by Galassi. So I included this one too, since I wasn't fully sure which one they were talking about. And this documents all the stuff that was found in the car. On 7/31/2022 at 6:15 hours, officers of the Strongsville Police Department were dispatched to the intersection of Progress Drive and Alameda Drive for a motor vehicle crash involving one vehicle that had struck a building. Upon the officers' arrival, we located a black Toyota Camry with severe damage and full airbag deployments on the property of Alameda Drive. 3 occupants were inside, 1 female juvenile and 2 adult males. They were unconscious, not breathing, and trapped inside the vehicle. The Strongsville Fire and emergency medical services arrived on scene and extricated the occupants. Metro Life Flight was contacted, arrived on the scene, and transported the female to Metro Health Hospital. The Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office was contacted, and the coroner's office arrived on scene for the deceased males. Notifications were made to all family involved. Center towing was called and towed the vehicle involved. This is an ongoing investigation. And this is also written by Galassi, so I will read this one as well. On 7/31/2022 at 6:15 hours, well, I'm gonna skip that one since I just read that. When I ran to the scene, I observed a black Toyota Camry bearing Ohio plate and with severe front end damage, which appeared to be severed in half from the front end down the middle of the body of the car. I immediately notified dispatch of the vehicle's condition. Upon running up to the car, I observed full front and side airbag deployments. I looked inside the still intact driver's side window and saw a young white female's body, which did not appear to be moving or breathing. All we could see was the lower torso of her body and a part of her leg. She appeared to be folded over and pinned under the passenger side, underneath the passenger dashboard, which had caved in on top of her. I notified dispatch that the vehicle was occupied. I then ran around to the other side to check to see if there were any other passengers. And I just want to say, I don't think he meant to say passenger side here because she was pinned under the driver's side. And the driver's dashboard is what caved in on top of her. But I mean, I could be wrong. And that might be what Natalie was referring to when she was saying that she was on his side of the car because the drawings don't show that. The drawings show she was on her side of the car. And I believe I read in one of the reports that maybe she had her like head leaned over and on Dominic's side, but she was in the driver's side, not the passengers. It should be noted that the engine was not hot. It was warm and the muffler was not making any crackling noises. There was also no smell of the airbag powder in the air either. Using my experience, it was obvious that this accident happened around an hour or more before the vehicle was found and called in. Once on the passenger side of the vehicle, I observed that there was at least one other male involved. The male appeared to be a younger black male who also did not appear to be alive or breathing, with blood coming from his ears and face. From the positioning of his body, you could tell that he was a rear seat passenger who was thrown to the front passenger seat from the impact. It appeared that this male was not wearing a safety belt. I immediately notified dispatch of this information. This male was later identified as Davion Flanagan. We continued checking the passenger side of the vehicle when I noticed there was another male that appeared to be the front seat passenger. The male's body appeared to be broken and he had severe head and facial injuries. Upon looking at the injuries, it appeared that this male was deceased. He also had blood coming out of his ears and head, and his head appeared to be crushed by the impact. Oh my God. This male was later identified as Dominic Russo. And that also may explain a little how in the previous video where they're notifying Mackenzie's parents and Officer Galassi says, "Oh no, Dom Russo wasn't in the car." Dominic had severe injuries to him. He was crushed, his head was crushed. So that could be why the officer didn't think it was him. I immediately notified dispatch that we had 3 occupants and no one was conscious nor appeared to be breathing. Around this time, Officer Valco, Officer Robinson, Officer Smead, Officer Bruning, and Sergeant Steving were all advised and started arriving on scene. Officer Valco was able to bust out the front driver's side window and the rear driver's side window. We were able to cut away the airbags and get to the female driver. The driver was alive and appeared to be breathing, but her upper body was still pinned underneath the passenger dashboard, which collapsed on top of her. We were able to make out sounds of her mumbling. I immediately notified dispatch that our driver was breathing and asked SFD to step it up. I also advised them that we needed a full extraction on all 3 occupants of our vehicle. At this time, I was able to call in the license plate to dispatch. The trunk was open and there was a large radius of debris from the crash. The plate was OH plate. We asked if there was a young female associated with this license plate. Dispatch advised us the vehicle has been driven by a 17-year-old white female per our CAD records. The female's name was Mackenzie Shirilla. Strongsville FD started arriving on scene, and we were able to start trying to free all 3 occupants of the vehicle. They had to use mechanical tools in the jaws of life to get them. They were first able to pull out Davion from the back seat. We were able to positively identify Davion because he had a wallet on his person with his driver's license side of it. SFD stated he had a light pulse. They were able to call for 2 Lifelight helicopters to respond to our crash scene. Davion was taken by SFD medic number 1 and put in the back of their unit. While he was in there, they advised that they had lost the pulse and he was deceased. The second Lifelight helicopter was canceled. At this time, SFD was able to free driver Mackenzie Shirilla. She was talking briefly and was able to give us her first name. I confirmed the name with dispatch. She appeared to have severe lower right leg injuries as well as right arm injuries. We attempted talking with her more about the passengers' names, and she uttered Jacob to SFD personnel. She then briefly asked about Davion. Mackenzie appeared to have a head injury as well from this crash. She was taken by Berea Fire Department, and they treated her until the Lifelight helicopter would arrive on scene. While she was taken by Berea Fire Department, they arrived Officer Valco that Mackenzie had a large bag of mushrooms and a digital scale on her person. Both items were handed to him and later entered into evidence. The mushrooms were later weighed out in the property room and they weighed 8 grams. Okay, so this is where they say she uttered Jacob to SFD personnel. So I don't know, that may have happened. There are parts, that we don't see when they first take her out. There is a part where she's in the ambulance and they ask her for the name and she does say Dom, but the officer ends up walking out and saying Jacob for some reason. So was that told to him previously and that's where he got that from? Did she actually say Jacob to SFD personnel? I don't know. That could have happened, but it doesn't appear like it did. But again, there are parts that we don't see that are cut out. Again, she does say Dominic's name. It's just for some reason with the crazy hectic scene, the officer doesn't hear it or doesn't write it down or whatever. I do have that video on my channel if you want to look at it. I think it's labeled something like ambulance body cam. During this time, SFD attempted to free victim 2. His identity was not known to us at this time as he had no identification on his person or in the crash debris. His identity was hard to discover due to the severe head trauma. See, right there. They confirmed that he was indeed deceased. While waiting for Lifelight to arrive, I contacted the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office at 6:52 hours and advised them of our situation. I advised that we had 2 confirmed deceased males and that we only currently knew the identity of Davion. They advised they would send a medical examiner to the scene, and Dominic's identity was later discovered. Around this time, Lifelight helicopter arrived on the scene and landed in the parking lot. Lifelight took custody of the driver and transported her to Metro Hospital. Our crash investigation team was contacted and arrived on scene. Officer DeMore arrived and began taking measurements of the crash. His investigation and measurements will be added in an invest to the OH1 crash report. During this time, social worker called dispatch and advised she needed to contact the parents of Mackenzie Shirilla due to her being a juvenile female. The parents were contacted by Metro Health and they advised both the mother and father would be en route to Metro. Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner Brittany Handel then arrived on scene to examine the bodies of the 2 remaining males. At this time, we still did not know the identity of victim 2. The coroner's office took custody of both Dominic and Davion. The bodies were both transported back to the medical examiner's office. Around this time, Officer Zielinski and myself, Officer Galassi, were en route to Metro Hospital. Once on the scene, we were escorted to speak with Mackenzie's parents who were in the waiting room of the ER. Once in the waiting room, I was met by her mother and the vehicle owner, Natalie Shirilla, and her father, Stephen Shirilla. Both parents did not know what was going on and wanted to know the situation. I had to advise them that both their daughter was involved in a fatal MVA at Progress and Alameda Drive. I advised them that their daughter had to be life-flighted to Metro with severe injuries and was alive. They were advised that their daughter was the one driving and that 2 males were DOA. I advised them of the name of the only deceased male I knew, which was Davion. I asked them if they knew a Jacob, as muttered to us on scene when Mackenzie was asked who else was in the car. Neither parent knew who Jacob was, but advised that her boyfriend is Dominic Russo, who lives on Lawn Road, that we should contact Dominic to see if he knew who Jacob was. While there, they attempted calling Dominic's cell phone and there was no answer. I gave them my information and advised them to call if they needed anything. They asked if they needed to get a lawyer, and I recommended that they do. Both parents were highly emotional during this interaction. I also have this video on my channel, and I'll just say the parents really did not do much to help identify who the other person was in the vehicle. When they asked Natalie to call Dom, she says, I can't. They were fighting a lot and I'm blocked. So it's interesting that later in court to the judge at sentencing, she says she was calling Dom over and over and over again and calling his mom over and over because the CAD reports showing the times of when all this stuff happened, when Dom's mom was notified, when they were notified, and from what you see on the scene here shows that she is not telling the truth there. She immediately tries to blame the drugs on the two dead boys when they tell her, and they knew that their daughter did drugs all the time. It's not like they didn't know, and the drugs were found on her person, like in her shirt, so it wasn't something they could blame on the boys. Then Natalie's asking about the car. It's just crazy to me. And then when Dom's mom is notified, it's just so different. She thinks that there may have been someone else in the car, and even after finding out her son is dead, she is freaking out trying to find out how to contact the fourth person to make sure that he wasn't thrown from the vehicle and wasn't hurt in a ditch. But meanwhile, Mackenzie's parents just sat there and they knew their daughter was okay. And even when before she knew Dominic was killed, she was just told that they at first told that there was an accident and that Mackenzie was driving, and she immediately, I think, grabs her phone and says her mom, and they tell her that Natalie's already at the hospital. So her first thought before she even knew what happened to her son was to make sure Mackenzie's mom knew, but doesn't seem to be what was on Mackenzie's mom's mind. Granted, they didn't know it was Dominic in the car, but come on. Why didn't they pull out their phones, pull up Mackenzie's Instagram or whatever, and show a picture of them together and say, hey, is this who's in the car? I would think most people's families would at least want to know, hoping that they're going to say, no, it wasn't him. It wasn't him. I think when the dad tries to suggest that it may be Dom in the car, like Nana's like, shut up. Like as if that's going to change anything. It's just ridiculous. But I just think it's a very stark difference when they're notified versus when Dom's mom is notified. And Dom's mom wasn't notified until I think like 2 hours later after Mackenzie's parents had already talked to the officer and were sitting in the hospital. So Dom's mom wasn't notified until 2 hours later because how injured he was. It took them a while. It took, I think, Mackenzie finally waking up and saying, yeah, it was him in the car. When I spoke with Metro Health trauma doctor Armbruster advised us that Mackenzie suffered broken bones to her right leg and arm. She stated she would be going into surgery and was sedated on ketamine. She advised us that she did an alcohol screening and there was no alcohol. I advised the doctor about the mushrooms that were found on Mackenzie's person. Doctor advised us she would screen for that as well as other drugs. I advised her we would be doing a court order or a subpoena for the blood test results. We then departed Metro Hospital and were en route back to the crash scene. We arrived on scene. We collected all the evidence that was found inside the vehicle. We were able to collect $165 in cash, 8.1 grams of mushrooms, one digital scale, one silver iPhone with a pink case, one iPhone with an orange case, a Cadillac key fob, 10 grams of suspected marijuana, one THC pen, one bong, a Coach purse belonging to the driver, and a Michael Kors book bag. Items were entered into the property room inside of locker 32. Center towing arrived at the crash scene with a flatbed and towed the vehicle. On station, I was met by Detective Hizu. He advised that he would handle all the warrants and court orders needed for the blood work from Metro Health Hospital for our driver, Mackenzie Shirilla. While on station, we worked to identify the body of victim 2. Metro Health Hospital called and advised us they were able to wake Mackenzie up and ask her about who the front seat passenger was. She stated it was her boyfriend, Dominic Russo. As part of the property we discovered on scene of the crash was a Cadillac key fob. Dominic Russo is known to drive a black Cadillac and has been cited by SPD in the past for traffic violations. Just on 7/22/22, Dominic was pulled over on Waterford Parkway. Davion was his front seat passenger. On that night, Dominic was cited and marijuana was confiscated and entered for destruction. We were able to confirm the identity of Dominic Russo using his BMV image and by reviewing footage from that stop. At this time, I was able to positively identify the body that I viewed in the crash as Dominic Russo. Officer Valco, who was also on scene of the crash, was also able to view the footage and also confirmed At this time, Sergeant Marsala, our police chaplain, Father Joe, and other units went to the Russo residence to make death notifications. They were met by Dominic's mother, Christine Russo, and advised of her passing. They were able to speak with Dominic's father, Frank, by phone and advised him that Dominic had texted his father at 2:53, "I love you, Dad." Sergeant Marsala and Father Joe responded to Davion's address on Kelsey Lane in Strongsville to attempt to make notifications. While there, they were met by a neighbor who advised them that the parents and family were out of town and traveled to Topsail Island. Sergeant Marsala was able to contact the family and notified them of Davion's passing. They said they would come back home on 8/1. At 21:41 hours, SPD received a call about a female whose son had useful information about the fatal MVA. I called our caller back and spoke with Deanna Foss Knight. Deanna stated that her son, David Proctor, who's also known as Tyler Proctor, is friends with Mackenzie Shirilla and Davion Flanagan. She stated that her son David sent her pictures regarding Davion's Life 360 app. She stated that David is friends with Davion on the app and can check his location and even his speeds when he is moving. She went further into detail, stating that using this app, her son took screenshots of Davion's final movements. This app also has GPS satellite view coordinates. The photos from the Life 360 app show that the vehicle Davion was in started moving westbound from Brushwood Lane at 5:30 hours. The vehicle traveled westbound on Whitney Road and then turned southbound onto Pearl at 5:33. At 5:34, the vehicle turned to go westbound down onto Progress Drive. On Progress Drive, the speeds of the vehicle topped out at 90 miles an hour according to the app. It shows one high speed alert, one hard braking alert. It shows the vehicle's final resting spot into the building using satellite view coordinates. Total time recording on the app are from 5:30 to 5:36 hours. It indicates that it stopped at Elizabeth Circle. All of these Life 360 app pictures were saved and uploaded to the report. Also, Deanna stated that she has heard from a lot of kids that Mackenzie was doing drugs this evening. She stated that Mackenzie documents her partying regularly using her Snapchat and Instagram accounts. Deanna sent me a picture of Mackenzie smoking what appears to be a large marijuana cigarette just from the day of the accident. Her Instagram name is Mackenzie Shirilla. The account is currently public per information we have been gathering. Her Snapchat account name is Mackenzie Shirilla. Pictures of Life 360 and account names and picture of Mackenzie smoking were added to the report. Per the information we have gathered from processing the scene, it appears that Mackenzie Shirilla was traveling westbound on Progress Drive from Pearl Road. On Progress Drive, the posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour. The picture we took of the speedometer at the crash scene shows it was stuck at a speed of 72 miles per hour. It is estimated that Mackenzie drove 90 miles per hour westbound on Progress, veered right off the roadway, drove into the grass, went through the intersection of Alameda Drive, went into the grass, drove through the Politico business sign, and struck the corner of Alameda Drive where the vehicle came to a final rest. Excessive speed and drugs appear to be contributing factors in this event. Included in the case jacket is BMV printouts for victims and parties directly involved in the crash. Crash report was completed. BCW recorded during today's events. Detective follow-up. Another thing I did want to clear up where it does say that the speed, I've seen some people try to use the picture of the speedometer stuck at 72 miles per hour to say that all this other information they have is wrong, but that's not how that works. They were able to see not only through the Life 360, but the crash reconstruction report that she was going over 90 miles an hour and almost at 100 miles per hour at a point right before. And it's actually, and it's how it shows one hard braking event, which would likely be from, because this is another thing that has people, stating that the EDR is wrong because it says she didn't brake, that it's actually the car's safety system that kicked in. They like to use the excuse with all those runaway Toyotas that Mackenzie's car could have had unwanted acceleration, but her car was 10 years past when that recall was, and her car had extra safety features installed because of those runaway Toyotas. So if she had the accelerator depressed and had hit the brake, it would have reverted the car into a limp mode because that's one of the safety features because of those runaway Toyotas. And then another safety feature is the crash detection. You do see briefly the brake lights come on in the video, and what that is the car's safety system attempting to kick in. It was just the brake light was activated and the safety system was engaged, and it does say that in the report as well. But people have tried to take all that stuff out of context to say, oh yeah, see, the EDR is wrong because it says she didn't brake, but she did. No, she did not brake. If she had her accelerator had been stuck down, if she would have tried hitting the brake, it would have reverted the car into a limp mode and it wouldn't have been able to go further. Okay, and then this is the last one. I'm not going to read this one too because it's going to have the same information, but I'll just show it on the screen real quick. Back to the transcripts. Question, Section 3, Overview of EDR. What was included in this section of your report? Answer. It's basically describing what an event data recorder is and what it does in relation to the vehicle crash. There's a computer module inside, usually within the airbag control module. Its job is, for lack of a better term, to wake up whenever there's a significant event. It uses the term delta V, which is a change in the velocity over time. Whenever it senses a large enough delta V, the margin changes speed over a short period of time. The computer wakes up and it will record what's going on inside the vehicle. And it will back up. In this case, it backs up 4.6 seconds prior to the event and captures information to include speed, whether or not the brake was engaged, whether or not the accelerator was depressed. It can record up to whether the seatbelt was engaged as well. Every vehicle is different when it comes to EDRs. Question, is this EDR in a Toyota different than in other automakers? Answer, it is. Question, how is it different? Answer, most vehicles, when they have an EDR, it will wait until the entire crash event completes before it writes data, but a Toyota records in real time. So a Toyota will have multiple, it could have as many event triggers inside of one crash. That's why there are multiple events within this one reported crash. It could be multiple different types of events, such as a rollover, a frontal crash, a side crash, a rear crash. Anytime that the EDR would have woken up, it records that event inside the singular crash incident. Question. Conducting EDR analysis on a Toyota, does that make your job more difficult to decipher the information because it's recording multiple events at the same time? Answer. I wouldn't say it's more difficult. You have to make sure that you're overlaying each event because they're recording on top of each other. Since it goes back 4.5 seconds, one event includes information from a prior event, so you have to make sure your events line up at the proper times. Question. Take us through the information that you included in section 5. Answer. This includes the table that I spoke about previously to show that the recording status was complete. I highlighted it in the table just to show that the data was able to be used to make determinations in the crash. I go on to determine it was from a single ignition cycle, and the previous ignition cycle before that was outside of the highest level of measure, which is roughly 32 seconds. So before the data that I used, the last ignition cycle before that was greater than 32 seconds. So I knew it was before the incident, so I ignored all that information. Question, how many events were you able to pinpoint that were recorded on this EDR? Answer, from this crash, there were 6 events associated with this crash. Question, were you able to decipher one of these events that was the initial event that woke up the EDR? Answer, I was. Question, what was that information? Answer, that information was trigger event number 5, and Toyota, the way they do it, the lower the number, the older the information. So I knew the lowest number that I took into consideration had to be the oldest event. That would be the first event I recorded. The second event would be a higher number because they go in sequence. Question, did you demonstrate that in your report? Answer, yes. That would be on my report is written in the reverse order with the first event recorded listed on page 6. Question, I have page 6 on the screen. Is that what you were looking at on the witness stand? Answer, yes. Question, tell us about this table on page 6. Answer, the first event that woke up the EDR in this case was the computer sensed it as a rollover event, but the car may not have actually rolled over. It just had enough lateral force, meaning side-to-side force, acting on it, and the computer thought it was turning over. The reason for that is from the hard steering event that I have highlighted in the report. So you can see that the 4.5 seconds prior to this event occurring, there's a small right turn being put in, and then there's a left turn. The negative numbers indicate a right turn. The positive numbers indicate left turn for this. And then there's a significant right-hand turn at the point of event, which woke the EDR up. It's a 142.5-degree turn. Question, you're talking about 142 on 360-degree circle, correct? Answer, correct. Question, not quite a 50%, something less than a 50% turn? Answer, yes. Question, would that, in your opinion, be significant enough input to cause this EDR to wake up? Answer, it would be because of how fast the vehicle was going. Anyone who's driven a car knows that the slower you are going, you need to put more steering to the car to get it to turn. But when you're driving at a high speed, a hard yank from top to bottom would cause a significant side-to-side movement of the car. Question, is it your testimony that the event occurred 4.75 seconds prior to the impact of the Toyota? Answer, no, it was less than that. Question, how are you able to tell that? Answer, I was able to line up the tables. 4.75 is how far it goes back in total, but there was only about 1.1 seconds of overlap from the hard steering impact leading up to it prior to hitting the wall. Question, that hard steering event happened less than 2 seconds before it impacted with the wall? Answer, yes. Question, I want to go back and start on page 3 of your report. So I'm going to pause real quick. So the hard steering event happened less than 2 seconds before it impacted with the wall. I've seen a lot of arguments where people try to say that the airbags went off before they even got to this intersection here. But these here are not skid marks. They're from the intense steering engagement. The scene photographs show that the vehicle struck a curb prior to striking the wall. This could have caused the drive wheels to leave the road surface, which would cause a decrease in the engine throttle. This curb could also explain the TRG9. TRG9 could have been triggered when the wheels made contact with the ground after striking the curb. This would explain why it registered as a frontal impact with only a small delta V. The wheels striking the ground caused a loss of acceleration, but not nearly enough to cause the damage observed on the vehicle. The above chart also shows that there is no point prior to the impact with the wall that the brake was applied. TRG5 backs up this conclusion by focusing on the yaw rate and steering input. I know Steve Shirilla has said over and over again that the airbags went off before she even left that intersection. That's not true. This is after she's left the intersection here. And they even say the TRG9 they believe was triggered when the wheels made contact with the ground after striking the curb. So the car went airborne when it struck the curb, and then the airbags went off after the TRG9. If the airbags are going off here, she's already on a collision course with the building. The building is in every which way you look. The building is all through this picture. So she was going to hit the building. It's really annoying when people try to use that as, oh no, the airbags went off beforehand and that's what made her crash into the building. No, she was already on a collision course with the building when the airbags went off. And not only that, but the airbags did not go off prior to leaving the intersection, like Steve claims. That's just a bunch of BS. Question. I want to go back and start on page 3 of your report. Are you following along with me? Answer, I am. Question. Okay, what is contained on page 3 of your report? Answer. Page 3 is where I determined which event that was triggered was the impact with the wall. I was able to determine it was TRG 11. It was the only impact recorded that could have possibly been the impact from the wall. Question. How are you able to determine TRG 11 is the only event recorded that could be the impact? Answer. There were 2 frontal impacts recorded. One was a delta V of 2.9, which is a very low amount. It would not record the amount of damage to the vehicle that you see in that picture. The second frontal impact registered all crash sensories, frontal, side, rear, and it had significant delta V of over 37. But that's the last recorded value before the computer was destroyed in the crash. So that's the last recorded value. I don't know if it would have gone higher. I don't know if it would have gotten anything after that. Sorry, and real quick pause. Also with the airbags, when he says the airbags, when Steve always says the airbags were deployed prior, these were also just the side airbags that were deployed at that time, not the frontal airbags. The frontal airbags were deployed when she hit the wall. All right, back to this. Question. Once the crash has occurred, is it your testimony this recorder is destroyed? Answer. It's not always. It takes a significant event for the computer to be completely destroyed, and it was in this case. Question. Why did you include the photograph of the Camry on page 3? Answer. Because it backs up the fact that you would need to see substantial front-end damage to register a 37 or higher delta V recording for frontal impact. Question. You testified about the TRG5 being the rollover event that woke up the black box. Answer. Right. Question. And you testified about TRG 11 being the impact. Answer. Yes. Question. Are there other significant events that were recorded? Answer. The other significant one that I marked is TRG 9. And that is the table itself is not in my report, but it has the frontal impact. It has a 2.9 delta V. And I was trying to find out why there would be a second frontal impact before it hit the wall. And I went back and reviewed some scene footage to figure out a potential cause of that accident. Question. Based on your review of the scene footage, were you able to identify a cause of that? Answer. Yes, I was. Question. What was that? Answer. If you go to the next page of my report, page 6. Well, hang on. We're going to just look through this. I just want to point out here. So it even says the next event, TRG 10, is listed as a side crash, but it does not have a delta V associated with it. TRG 10 is showing a side airbag deployment event. So that is when the side airbags deployed, is the TRG 10. So it's not before she leaves the intersection like Steve wants you to believe. The next event, TRG 11, is the event created when the vehicle struck the wall. This event is listed as frontal rear side crash and triggering all crash sensors. The delta V value maxed out at negative 37.3 over a period of 234.5 milliseconds. The crash linked to TRG 11 also destroyed the EDR, causing all future speed data to be invalid. All events after TRG 11 can be linked to forces continuing to act on the car as the crash event continued. As you can see, accelerator 100%. and that's why you see the decrease in the engine throttle. The pre-crash data from TRG-11 shows that the accelerator percent was at 100 continuously before the crash. The engine throttle decreased starting at 2.10 seconds prior to the event. This caused the car to lose some speed prior to impact. A review of the scene photographs could explain this decrease in the engine throttle without a decrease in accelerator percentage. After she strikes the curb and it goes airborne and she hits the sign, it's going to slow down. This also shows the shift position, drive, neutral, and drive. I'm just going to read this part in case we don't get to it. Based on these 3 events in the scene photos, it is believed the vehicle was traveling with the accelerator pedal fully engaged. The vehicle then had a hard steering event before striking a curb and continuing until it struck the building, causing the damage seen above. The EDR also showed that at no point was the service brake applied. The data from the EDR report shows the accelerator was pressed to 100% at least 4.75 seconds prior to the hard steering event that triggered the EDR to wake up and start recording. So let me repeat that. The data from the EDR report shows that the accelerator pedal was pressed to 100% at least 4.75 seconds prior to the hard steering event that triggered the EDR to wake up and start recording. It is possible that the accelerator was pressed before that mark, but the EDR only records back to a certain point after an event is triggered. Based on the overlap in the EDR data from TRG5 and 11, it can be determined that the pedal was depressed 100% for a minimum of 5.85 seconds prior to impact with the wall. That can be determined from the 4.75 of data prior to the TRG5 and another 1.10 seconds between TRG5 and 11. And then also the crash reconstruction is going to show that it was a lot more than 5 seconds or 6 seconds. It was more closer to a minute that the accelerator pedal was fully engaged. Question, based on your review of the scene footage, were you able to identify a cause of that? Answer, yes, I was. Question, what was that? Answer, if you go to the next page of my report, page 6, that photo shows the vehicle made contact with the curb prior to hitting the wall. At the speed it was recorded when the front tires hit the curb, I believe the front tires were airborne. And that is supported by the table on page 5, which shows prior to impact with the wall, the accelerator was depressed at 100%, but the engine throttle is substantially lower, and that is, I believe, because the front tires were no longer in contact with the road surface. Question, you are speaking about the second table included on page 5 of your report. Answer, yes. Question, and have you highlighted 3 of the columns in that table? Could you walk us through why you chose to highlight these particular columns? Answer, the first column I highlighted shows the accelerator pedal and what percentage it was depressed. It shows that 4.6 seconds prior to it hitting the wall, it was depressed at 100%. However, the engine throttle was at 100 to 99% up until 2.1 seconds prior, and I believe that is partially due to the steering and partially due to when it goes down to 23 seconds, 13.5 seconds, I'm sorry. 1.6 seconds, I believe, is when the tires go airborne. Question, to be clear, the first box is titled accelerator pedal. The second is the percentage of the engine throttle. Just a brief description of the difference between the two. Answer, the accelerator pedal is purely the pedal itself, how far it is down to the floor versus how far it's not depressed. The engine throttle is the RPM of the engine and how much force is acting in the throttle. The third column that I highlighted is the service brake. At no point during this event was there any pressure applied to the service brake. Question, this table goes back 4.6 seconds of information, is that correct? Answer, correct. Question, I wanted to ask you about the table at the top of page 5. You highlighted the 6th row down. Answer, that table continues. It's a continuation from the previous page, so you will see the heading from that one. That is the crash pulse or the delta V measure. I guess the delta V is change in velocity over time. So these are milliseconds. So the first column is how many milliseconds, so thousandths of a second versus how much speed is being lost. And at its highest value at the bottom is 37.2. It's being depressed at 37.2 in 230 milliseconds, so 230 thousandths of a second. Question, what is longitudinal and lateral crash pulse? Answer, lateral is front and back, longitudinal is side to side. Question, taking you to page 7 of your report, what is the information included here? Answer, this is a steering input we previously spoke about. I have highlighted it. Again, it's a continuation from the previous page. It's the yaw rate, the lateral turning of the car, and the steering input in degrees in the second column. Question, what is your conclusion from this data? Answer, the conclusion that I have from the data is at 4.5 seconds prior to the EDR waking up, there was moderate turning. At the time the computer initially woke up, there was a substantial hard right turn of 142.5 degrees, enough for the computer to trigger a rollover event. Question: as part of your investigation, did you visit the crash site? Answer: no, I did not. Question: please take us through the information on page 8, please. Answer: one of the things I was asked to address is a still shot from surveillance footage that showed there was a brief highlight of the brake lights of the vehicle, and I was asked to explain why, if the service brake was never engaged, why the brake lights turn on. And I was able to answer that based on Sergeant Fox from the Ohio State Highway Patrol's report. He was actually in touch with a Toyota service line technician. They explained as part of their safety measures, cars are now equipped with radar and crash sensing computers, and when it sensed a crash approaching, it pulsed the brake lights is their explanation of what happened. And I found no reason to contradict that information, so I adopted it verbatim from Sergeant Fox's report. It tells you it pulsed the brake lights, and it says right here, this question was posed due to observations from the surveillance footage. It appears that prior to making contact with the building, the brake lights were active, shown as the screenshot above. Per the Toyota master technician, as well as various Toyota demonstration videos, these systems use various radar and camera systems to provide assistance with crash avoidance. Most of these features involved slowing some or all of the vehicle's tires to maintain control and/or a safe distance from a vehicle or object ahead of the Toyota. When the systems become active, the vehicle will not increase speed, but rather decrease speed. As a result, the system will activate the rear brake lights to indicate the possible slowing of the vehicle to other motorists, even if the driver is not pressing on the brake pedal. Toyota Safety P-Sense works at speeds of 7 miles per hour to 110 miles per hour, but it does not work with objects that appear in front of the vehicle without prior detection. With the availability of the system and the extreme driver input from the vehicle in the collision, the brake light activation is likely the result of the safety systems working to avoid the impact ahead or return the vehicle to a straight orientation for the direction of travel. And then this is just what I was saying about this report was done by Sergeant McQuaid, and it was also peer reviewed. Okay, so here it is, the VSC, which is the Vehicle Stability Control. It's a computerized safety system designed to prevent the car from losing control or skidding sideways, like sliding out or spinning out, during evasive maneuvers, hard cornering, or when it's driving on slippery roads. It actively monitors your steering wheel angle, wheel speeds, and vehicle rotation, the yaw. If it senses the car sliding, it automatically adjusts engine power and applies the brake to individual wheels to help steer the car back on its intended path. It says right there, it's engaged. So that was the car safety system there. Question: were you able to make any final conclusions about this based on the data you reviewed? Answer: yes. Based on the data I reviewed, it was determined that the vehicle was traveling with the accelerator pedal fully engaged prior to impact. The vehicle then had a hard steering event to the right, which woke up the computer and struck the curb, landed, which triggered another frontal impact and continued on into the wall. At no point during this entire sequence was a service brake applied. My data is limited to the 4.6 seconds that Toyota provides. It showed for that entirety. Prior to the hard steering, the accelerator was at 100% and the brake was not applied. I don't know what happened prior to that 4.6 seconds. All right, and now it's going into cross-examination, so it's going to be Mr. McDonald. Question: sir, my name is Jim McDonald. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If at any time you don't understand the question, ask me to repeat it or rephrase it. Fair enough? Answer: fair. Question: does the black box signify in general when someone would have pressed the accelerator to 100 degrees? Isn't that a triggering event? Answer: if it generated enough delta V, just pressing the pedal alone would not. It would have to substantially reduce the speed in a certain amount of time for it to wake up the black box. Question: reduce the speed? I'm talking about accelerating the speed. Answer: general speaking, the accelerator would not wake up the black box. Question: would not? Answer: because even the fastest cars can't accelerate fast enough to trigger that much speed to gain in the milliseconds it would take. We're talking fractions of a second. Question: the EDR box. It basically breaks it down into milliseconds, right? Each event. Answer: it depends on how often the vehicle records the data. Question: as it relates to this event, once it started at 4.6 seconds prior to the crash, how many in what time increments was it broken down? Answer: half-second increments. Question: half second? Answer: yes. Question: we get a snapshot every half second or 9 times total? Answer: correct. Question: at 4.6 seconds, what triggered the black box? Answer: I'm sorry if I was not clear. It wasn't at the 4.6 second mark that it triggered it. It was the hard steering events that triggered. But the way the computer records, it takes 4.6 seconds prior to the trigger. So the trigger was the steering and it recorded back 4.6 seconds. Question. So from the hard steering backwards, there was nothing? Answer. There was information that showed the prior steering that was going. It wasn't a substantial steering, but there was some steering going on. Question. When did the first steering occur? Answer. The car is always being steered to some degree. Question. When was it? Answer. The first trigger event was TRG5. It's also recorded 4.6 seconds back. Question. In TRG5, what happened? Answer. There was a hard steer to the right. Question. Before that hard steer, were there prior steerings? Answer. There was a minor steering before that. Question. 2 of them, right? Answer. There was a small steering to the right and a small steer to the left. But yes, then a very hard steer to the right. Question. So at what point did the slight steer to the right occur? Answer. The slight? The first? I can't say for sure because at the 4.6 seconds prior, it was already engaged to the right to some degree. I don't know when that started. All I can tell you is when it started recording. Question. When was the degree for the slight right turn? Question. The first recorded mark was a 10.5 degrees. Question. When was the degree for the slight right turn? Answer. The first recorded mark was 10.5 degrees. Question. So it goes 0, 90, 180, 270, 360? Answer. Correct. Question. So 10 degrees, something like that, right? Answer. That's a little more than 10. Question. And then there was a steer to the answer, the highest steer to the right. Question. No, I'm talking about first you said there was a 10-degree steer to the right. Answer. Continued to the right. And then 28 degrees, then back to the 22 degrees, and then it was a 1.5 degree to the left. Question. Not very much at all past 12? Answer. No. Question. But a 20-degree turn from where it ended back to there? Answer. Yes. A 1.5 degree turn is not a turn at all. Question. You can't tell us when that occurred? Answer. That 1.5 degree left turn occurred at 3.5 seconds prior to the hard turn to the right. Question. The hard turn to the right occurred at what point? Answer. In reference? Question. In reference to the last 4.6 seconds. Answer. That would be 0.0 for that event, TRG5. 0.0 is always the trigger event, and then it goes backwards. Question. How much time passed from the hard right turn to the point of impact? Answer. 1.1 seconds. Question. 1.1 seconds? Answer. Yes. Question. You said the second right turn, third turn, was how many degrees? Answer. 142.5 degrees. Question. So more than 90? Answer. Yes. Question. At about a little closer to the 180 than the 90, right? Answer. Yes. Question. Very significant? Answer. Correct. Question. And that was the first triggering event? Answer. Yes. Question. Registered as a rollover? Answer. Right. Question. It's at the point that the seatbelt's deployed, correct? And the court says seatbelt, airbags. And the question says airbags. Answer. No, the airbags deployed later. There was another event that registered a side airbag deployment. Question. When was that? Answer. That event, I don't have it listed in my report because I didn't list it as a frontal impact. I believe it would be the TRG10. Question. You believe or you know? Answer. I would need the CDR report. Question. You didn't bring it up with you? Answer. No. Question. Showing you States Exhibit 31. Answer. It will take me 1 second. Question. Take whatever time you need. Answer. And I reference it in my report on page 3. TRG10 was listed as a side crash. It was the airbags deployed from the side at least. I think he's actually talking about his report, not the CDR report. Yeah, the next event, TRG10, is listed as a side crash, but it does not have a delta V value associated with it. TRG10 is showing as a side airbag deployment event. Back to this. I reference it in my report on page 3. TRG10 was listed as a side crash. It was the airbags deployed from the side at least. Question. Are you saying both sides? Answer. It just says airbag deployment. Question. In your experience doing accident reconstruction, tell us what the deployment of an airbag is. Answer. It's an explosion of gas that fills a bag to prevent an injury in an accident. Question. And it's a pretty violent act, correct? Answer. Right. Question. And it causes people in the car to move, right? Answer. It can. Question. Not only can, but in your experience it does? Answer. Yes. Question. And also when the airbag is deployed, there's some powder that's also released, right? Answer. Yes. Question. And describe what that powder is. Answer. I don't know what the chemical makeup is, but it's like a dust. That would be the best way to describe it. Question. A dust. If you're anywhere in the car, it's like a huge bang to you and dust and everything is all over. Answer. Yes. Question. And that occurred right after a hard how many degree? Answer. 42.5. Question. A 42 degree turn to the right? Answer. Yes. Question. And you were not in the car, so you don't know who or what caused that steering wheel to go in that direction, right? Answer. I only know the steering wheel went in that direction. Question. That's all you can tell us? Answer. Yes. Question, in your experience as an accident reconstructionist, is there a term or a concept of the time it takes from someone to perceive something until they react to it? Answer, yes. Question, what is it called? Answer, it's the time of perception. Question, time of perception? Answer, and time of reaction. Question, is it a pretty standard number? Answer, it's hard to measure. There's an industry accepted value of 1.5 seconds. Question, 1.5 seconds? Answer, from the time it takes to perceive a threat and to respond. Question, 1.5 seconds before I even do anything? Answer, right. Question, and there's also a term in your business called pedal misapplication. Answer, I'm not familiar with that term. Question, you're not? Answer, no, I've never heard it in my training. Question, it's fair. And how about occupant kinematics? Answer, yes. Question, what is that? Answer, it's the movement of the body inside the vehicle prior to and post crash. Question, there are people that are experts in that area. Answer, yes. Question, but you're not? Answer, I am not. Question, on your report, you talk about hitting curbs, correct? Answer, yes. I wasn't there, so I don't know. Based on the images provided, it looks like they struck that curb before striking the wall. Question, is that the only curb you're talking about? Answer, yes. Question, did you say you thought it hit a curb once or twice? Answer, I don't know. All I know is for sure, based on those pictures that I was provided, it definitely drove through the one curb before. Question, traveling down the street, you don't know anything about that car other than the last 4.75 seconds. Answer, correct. Question, would you agree that the side curtain airbag inflates within 20 to 30 milliseconds of a triggering event? Answer, I would have to take a look. Question, absolutely. Answer, yeah, that is an appropriate time. Question, pardon? Answer, that's an appropriate time, about 30 milliseconds. Question, that's like, answer, that's why it looks like there are multiple events, but they're all happening simultaneously and on top of each other. They're all essentially happening within the same confines of time. That's why Toyota, it looks like more is going on because it records every sequence of events that is happening. Question, if someone is driving, there are all sorts of things happening in a split second, right? Answer, yes. Question, what are seatbelt pretensioners? I'm probably saying that wrong. I don't know. Answer, those are whenever you're involved in a change of speed, the seatbelt will lock in place to prevent movement. Question, were you able to determine if it happened here? Answer, I wasn't. I didn't examine the car. Question, that wouldn't have been available from the black box? Answer, no. Question, how long does the airbag remain deployed once inflated? Answer, there are a lot of things that can go into it, so I can't give you a time. I don't know is the answer, I guess. Question, it doesn't deflate? Answer, no. Question, right away? Answer, no. Question, it stays there to protect the people, right? Answer, right. And he has no further questions, so we'll go to redirect, which is the prosecution. Question, Sergeant, I want to clarify the 42.5-degree turn that you identified as TRG5. Answer, yes. Question, is it your testimony that a hard right turn took place less than 2 seconds prior to impact? Answer, prior to impact, yes. Question, what was the exact time? Answer, 1.1 seconds. Question, 1.1 seconds prior to impact is when that event took place? Answer, yes. Question, and is that event also the same event that caused the airbags to deploy? Answer, no. The turn is not what caused the airbags to deploy. Question, what causes the airbags to deploy? Answer, I don't know for sure. It's listed as a side impact. It comes slightly after the hard turn event. Question, it certainly doesn't come before the hard turn event. Answer, no. Question, therefore it would be within that 1.1 seconds before impact? Answer, yes. And then he has no further questions. Yeah, that's a good point. It's the 1.1 seconds before impact that the airbags deploy. So not before she's leaving the intersection like Steve claims or anything like that. And for her lawyer and other people I've seen to claim, oh, she just probably didn't have time to react. No, this is all in the 1.1 seconds before impact. She's already on a trajectory to hit the building. The airbags deploying didn't make her like not be able to see, and that's why she hit the building. That argument is so infuriating and out there because the airbags didn't deploy until she already left the intersection. The tires went airborne, the car went airborne, and then the airbags deploy, and then she hits the sign in the building. And that's the side airbags deploying, and then the front airbags deployed on impact with the wall. And I have had airbags go off on me in an accident, and it is like a punch to the face. And I also had a little piece of the car, come off and hit me in the face. And I'm not saying it's not painful and doesn't shock you or anything like that, but that airbag, that front airbag coming out, that probably would have hit her in the face. did not happen until she impacted with the wall. And the side airbag's coming off. It's already as she's about to hit the wall. It didn't cause her to hit the wall. It's such a ridiculous argument. Lastly, I just want to pull up that trajectory again one more time. This shows it a little bit, but I'll pull up the other one better. That's better. So this is where the car hits the curb and the vehicle goes airborne. She clipped the sign on the driver's side right here. The front tires, after hitting the curb, went airborne, and they think when the tires landed is when the side airbags deployed, and that would also be when she's hitting the sign. The stop sign. Steve wants you to believe that the airbags deployed before she went into this intersection, so like here, and it's not true. It's again just the side airbags. The side airbags deployed somewhere after there. So again, she's already on trajectory to hit the building. The airbags didn't make her hit the building. And how they're saying, oh, it takes longer than a second to react. She's already going to hit the building and not stopping. What is it they're trying to say she's reacting to? Hitting the sign. Yeah, she hits the sign or clips the sign and then the building. But all that happened in like 1.1 seconds. And that's right before impact. So that's like the end. That's when everything's ending. It's not like that was 5 seconds previously and then she just couldn't catch up and then hit the wall. So she hit the sign right before she hit the wall. Next up in line is Dr. Esther Tseng, who reviewed Mackenzie's medical records and treated Mackenzie while she was in the hospital after the crash. As usual, I'll just be stating question and answer instead of prosecution, witness, prosecution, witness. And they're going to stipulate to this witness again. It'll be the prosecution first. Question, could you please spell your first and last name for the record? Answer, my name is Esther, Esther, like the Bible, and my last name is Tseng, spelled Tseng. And if I'm not saying this correctly, I apologize. Question, thank you, Dr. Tseng. Are you employed? Answer, I am. Question, and where are you employed? Answer, Metro Health System. It's just going over that she's a trauma surgeon at Metro, and they start to go over her qualifications, and then I believe she is stipulated as an expert, so I'll just read this part briefly. Question, Dr. Tseng, if you could just briefly go over your educational history. Answer, sure. I graduated from New York University in 2007 with a Bachelor of Arts in Chemistry. I completed my medical degree at Mount Sinai School of Medicine, which is now known as Econ School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in 2011. I finished my general surgery residency at Temple University Hospital in Philadelphia in 2016. And then I completed my fellowship in surgical critical care at Parkland Memorial Hospital and University of Texas Southwestern in 2017. Question, when did you become hired at Metro Health Hospitals? Answer, October of 2017. Question, have you been so employed there since? Answer, correct. And then they state that they are stipulating this witness as an expert, and Mr. McDonald agrees. Question, Dr. Tseng, if you could briefly just explain for the court what your daily responsibilities and duties are as a trauma surgeon for Metro Health. Answer, my partners and I cover a number of different services throughout the hospital, one of which is the initial evaluation, the stabilization, and then the treatment of patients who receive traumatic injuries. Question, okay, what does a typical shift look like for you as a trauma surgeon? Answer, so on a day when I am covering the trauma service, the day starts at 7 a.m. with a review of the patients who are admitted overnight, as well as any important overnight events for the patients under our care, and then the rounds on the patients that are under our care. And we receive new trauma activations as they arrive. The day ends at 5 p.m. Question, I'm sorry, the day? Answer, the shift ends at 5 p.m. Thank you, Dr. Tseng. While you are providing emergency trauma care to a patient, do yourself and your partners document the process in any way? Answer, yes. We document our findings, our thoughts, our concerns, our plans, and the electronic medical record that we use at Metro Health. Question, who has access to these documents? Answer, members of the healthcare team. I'm not sure every single person has access to that within the system. Question, I can ask you a little bit more direct. Would all doctors who are working on a patient have access to that patient's medical record? Answer, yes. I would say that would be my expectation. Question, thank you. Are these medical records ongoing during a patient's stay at Metro Health? Answer, yes. Question, are they updated by time and event? Answer, That is the ideal situation. Sometimes too many things happen at once that you have to generate a document which spans events that happened over several hours, even the course of an entire shift or an entire day. It's not like Twitter or X where you can fire off 140 characters at a time while that is going on. Question. Generally speaking, when a physician is entering something into the medical system, it is updated by time. Is that correct? Answer. Yes. Question. Are these records kept in the ordinary course of your business? Answer. We do keep records within the bylaws of our Constitution. Question. If I showed you a copy of a patient's medical records treated by Metro Health in the trauma department, would you be able to recognize those records? Answer. I would expect so, yes. And then they've stipulated to States Exhibit 1, which is a disc that's been reviewed by counsel. It contains all the pages of the entire medical records for Mackenzie Shirilla. So we do not have access to all of that. It's medical records, so we're not going to be able to see any of that. So I won't be able to pull up those documents like I normally pull up with the exhibits. However, today the state is going to only be introducing a set of pages through these medical records that have also been examined and stipulated to by defense counsel. Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm handing you what has been previously marked as States Exhibit 1. Dr. Tseng, what is States Exhibit 1? Answer. States Exhibit 1 appears to contain medical records from the Metro Health System. Question. And if I could direct your attention first to the first page that's up on the screen, what is the first page here depicted on the screen? Answer. This appears to be certification from Marcia Martin, a supervisor in the Health Information Management Department, that these records are true and authentic copies of the electronic medical records pertaining to Mackenzie Shirilla, MRN number redacted. Question. What is MRN number? Answer. Medical record number. Question. Are you familiar with this page? Answer. Yes, I've seen this before. Question. When was the certificate of medical records dated? Answer. October 8th, 2023. Question. I'm sorry? Answer. Excuse me, August 8th. I apologize, I misspoke. Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to direct you now to the second page that you have on the screen. It is also listed as page 2. It should start with history of present illness. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. I do. Question. Dr. Tseng, if you could, for the record, before we start here at the top with history of present illness, if I could direct your attention all the way down to the bottom of the page to the left of page 2, underneath secondary survey. Do you see that? What is the date of birth for Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. It's listed as August 2nd, 2004. Question. Thank you, Dr. Tseng. Under our history of present illness, first, can you explain what is that section designated for? Answer. History of present illness is a section of note that allows a medical provider to document the circumstances surrounding the condition that has caused the patient to present this to the provider for evaluation and treatment. Question. Okay, and where is this information obtained from? Answer. This information can be obtained from a number of sources depending on the patient's situation. Question. Could you give us some examples of where this information could come from? Answer. Most commonly, it comes from the patient. However, in our specific practice, trauma surgery, this information may come from emergency medical services. Answer. Most commonly, it comes from the patient. However, in our specific practice of trauma surgery, this information may come from emergency medical services. It may come from witnesses of the event that led the patient to present to us. And sometimes it can come from family members and friends who have offered to give us information. Question. If you could, for the record, read what the history of present illness states. Answer. No chief complaints on file. Next paragraph. Mackenzie Shirilla is a 17-year-old female who is presenting to the ED as Cat 2 MVC per EMS. Unknown time of accident as no witnesses. Patient driver with prolonged extractions time. HDS during transport. 2 patients DOA. Patient does not remember what happened and does not remember driving. Reports pain everywhere. Sorry, I just want to cut into that real quick. So patient does not remember driving. So that's also different from what we've been hearing. I mean, sure, memory could come back after, but does the patient does not remember what happened and does not remember driving? It's not the same thing as I remember driving and then turning on the street and my vision fades to black. Anyway, sorry, back to the transcripts. Question. Thank you, doctor. Again, for the record, do you not know where that information is obtained from? Is that correct? Answer. I do not. Question. Could that information been have relayed by the patient, Mackenzie herself? Answer. It could have. Question. Okay, doctor, I'm going to bring you down now to where it says past history. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. Yes, I do. Question. If you could, for the record, starting with pertinent past history, reading down to pertinent social history, if you could read that. Answer. Pertinent past history. No past medical history on file. Pertinent family history, no family history on file. Pertinent social history on file. Occupational history, not on file. Tobacco use, smoking status, not on file. Smokeless tobacco, not on file. Substance and sexual activity, alcohol use, not on file. Drug use, not on file. Sexual activity, not on file. Question. Going to the next section, physical exam, I'm going to start underneath where it says BP. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer, yes. Question. What does BP mean for the record? Answer. It's a common medical brief for blood pressure. Question. What was the blood pressure listed? Answer. 100/53. Question. For the record, I'm going to direct your attention to where it says ED notes. Do you see that? Answer. Yes, I do. Question. Okay. Underneath there, is there a date and time? Do you see where that's listed? Answer. I do. Question. For the record, can you read what the date and time is there? Answer. The date and time is July 31st, 2022, 11:10 a.m. Question. Dr. Tseng, down to blood pressure, you said it was 100/53? Answer. That's what I saw listed here. Question. What is a typical considered to be normal blood pressure in your field? Answer. The classic normal blood pressure is often given as 120/80. However, what is normal for a patient may vary depending on their specific characteristics. Question. And pulse? Answer. 85. Question. And what is a typical or normal pulse in your field? Answer. Normal pulse is typically considered to be less than 100, but again, what's normal for a patient may vary based on their pertinent characteristics. Question. Temperature? Answer. 98.5 degrees, 36.9 Celsius. Question. Do you see where I'm looking? It says SpO2? Answer. Yes. Question. What is SpO2, Dr. Tseng? Answer. It's a medical abbreviation for oxygen saturation within the blood. Question. Approximately 11 o'clock on July 31st of 2022, what was the blood ox for Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. 98%. Question. What is typical for a normal individual? Answer. We would expect something in the range of 99 to 100. Question. I'm going to draw your attention to the next section where it says trauma exam. Do you see that? Answer. Yes. Question. If you could start with airway and read the results. Answer. Airway intact, patient talking, no hoarse or muffled voice, breathing spontaneous, equal and bilateral breath sound, circulation, palpable bilateral femoral pulses and palpable radial DP and PT, disability, C-collar, blocks, backboard, GCS 15, no exposure, no external bleeding noted. Question. With regards to the airway, based off what it is listed from the exam and your expertise as a trauma surgeon, does it appear the airway was intact and normal? Answer. Yes, I would say this is normal. Question. Breathing. Answer. What is documented here is consistent with a normal exam. Question. Thank you. Circulation? Answer. What's documented here is consistent with a normal exam. Question. Disability. What is a C-collar? Answer. C-collar is a medical abbreviation for cervical collar. It can be placed by emergency medical staff who are concerned a patient may have an as yet unknown cervical spine injury. Question. Exposure. No external bleeding. Does it mean? Answer. It means we did not find any blood upon the patient's skin. Question. Thank you, Dr. Tseng. I'm going to draw your attention to the next page that you have, which is listed as page 7. Is this what you have in your hand, the same as depicted on the scene? Answer. I believe so. Question. I'm going to draw your attention first to the date and time underneath ED notes. For the record, can you read what the date and time is underneath the ED notes? Answer. The date is listed as July 31st, 2022. The time is listed here as 7:44 a.m. Question. Thank you. I'm going to direct your attention all the way to the bottom of the page where it says pre-hospital medications. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. I do. Question. And if you could read for the record what the pre-hospital medications are listed for Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. None. Question. Thank you, Dr. Tseng. I'm going to draw your attention to the next page, which you have. On my page, it's 13. Do you have a page listed as 13 in your possession? Answer. I do. Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to now draw... Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to now draw your attention all the way to the bottom where it says Metro Health Division of Acute Care Surgery. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. Yes. Question. Right above that to the left of the large print, there is an author of these records. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. I do. Question. Who is now authoring the portion of this medical records for Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. I am listed as the author here. Question. And if you could state the date and time that is listed there? Answer. So the file date is August 1st, 2022 at 5:13 p.m. The date of service is listed as July 31st, 2022 at 7:44 a.m. Question. What is the difference between the date of record being 8/1/22 and the date of service being 7/31/22? Answer. The date of service is meant to be an approximation of the time that you evaluated the patient. The file date is the time that you actually entered your findings into the medical record. Question. According to this, you would have examined Mackenzie Shirilla at approximately 7:44 a.m. on July 31st, 2022. Is that correct? Answer. That is correct. Question. Underneath the basic injury information, do you see where I'm looking, Dr. Tseng? Answer. I do. Question. If you could just read those categories underneath, starting with the level of activation. Answer. Level of activation, Category 2, trauma, upgraded to Cat 1. Mode of transport, lifelike. Mechanism of injury, MVC, high-speed MPH. Complicating factors, entrapment, extrication, not prolonged. Protective measures, not applicable. Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to bring you to the next page now. It should be page 14. Do you see that page in your possession? Answer. Yes. Question. Is what you're looking at what you're looking at on the screen? Answer. Yes, I believe so. Question. Okay, I'm going to direct your attention to where it says, let's start with the primary survey. Do you see that? Answer. Yes, I do. Question. Can you read underneath primary survey what the results are starting from the airway, please? Answer. Airway intact, breathing normal, breath sounds equal bilaterally, circulation, pulses normal, skin, normal skin color, texture, and turgor, no rashes or lesions, disability, pupils, Perla, GCS, best eyes 4, best verbal 5, best motor 6, total 15. Question. Thank you. And as far as breathing, you read her breathing was normal. Is that correct? Answer. That's what I said. Question. And it says circulation, pulses, and skin were normal. Is that correct? Answer. That's what I said. Question. Down where it says pupils, it says Perla. What does that mean? Answer. That is a medical abbreviation for pupils equally round and reactive to light. Question. Does that mean her pupils were also reacting normally? Answer. Yes. Question. What does GCS stand for? Answer. It's a medical abbreviation for the Glasgow Coma Scale. Question. Is there a total number that an individual can reach as far as the Glasgow Coma Scale that will indicate their vitals are reacting normally? Answer. A normal Glasgow Coma Scale score is 15, but a Glasgow Coma Scale score of 15 does not mean all is well with the patient. Question. Can you explain that for us? Answer. It is perfectly possible for a patient with a Glasgow Coma Scale of 15 can be, for example, having a massive heart attack. It is possible for a patient with a Glasgow Coma Scale score of 15 to be having a stroke. It is just one measure of a patient's neurological status. Question. What was the total score for Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. 15. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to bring you down to the secondary survey. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. Yes. Question. I'm going to start with neurologic. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. I do. Question. Can you read the results for Mackenzie Shirilla at approximately 7:44 a.m. on July 31st of 2022 were for neurologic? Answer. Neurologic, alert and oriented, appropriate, strength symmetrical, no sensory deficits. Question. And the next session is HEENT. What does that stand for? Answer. That is a medical abbreviation for head, eyes, ears, nose, and throat. Question. Okay, and if you could read the results here for her Hench. Answer. Head, no lacerations, bone step-offs or abrasions, midface stable to palpation, ecchymosis over right eye. Question. Dr. Tseng, what does ecchymosis mean? Answer. That is a medical term for bruising. Answer. And eyes? Answer. Eyes, Perla, conjunctive corneas without lesions and EOM intact, corrective lenses removed. Question. And if you could just briefly give us a summary of what that finding means for her eyes? Answer. This appears to be a normal eye exam. Question. Okay, Dr. Tseng, I'm going to bring you to the next page. It should be page 15, starting with ears, if you could read that. Answer. Ears, no hemotympamum. Question. What does that mean? Answer. Blood emanating from the eardrum. Question. Nose. I'm going to pronounce so many of these words wrong, so. Answer. Septum midline, no crepitus with motion. Question. What does crepitus with motion mean? Answer. It's a medical term for a crunchy feeling. Question. Does that mean her nose was normal? Answer. No crepitus with motion is normal. That is correct. Question. Throat. Answer. Oral cavity without trauma. Question. Neck. Answer. No midline tenderness, lacerations, or wounds. Question, pulmonary. Answer, breath sounds clear, symmetrical, no wheezes, rales, or consolidation. Question, did I miss chest? If you could go back to chest. Answer, chest, diffusely tender, no step-offs, deformities, or crepitus. Question, cardiovascular pulses. Answer, bilateral radial, femoral, DP, and PT pulses are normal. Question, does that mean your pulse overall was normal? Answer, that's what it appears to say. Question, abdomen, please. Answer, non-distended, non-tender to palpation, no scars, lacerations, or contusions. Question, for rectal pelvis, let's start there. Were those normal results as well? Answer, the rectal pelvis and perineum appeared normal. Question, musculoskeletal back and spine? Answer, no step-off or deformity noted. Question, extremities? Answer, gross deformity of right elbow, right knee, 2 centimeter lacerations to left knee, ROM intact in LUE/LLE. Question, what is gross deformity of right elbow? Answer, gross deformity means that the patient's elbow did not appear to have a normal shape or size. Question, doctor, I'm going to bring you down to the next main section where it says past medical history. Can you read for the record what past history? Answer, POTS per mother. Question, what is POTS? Answer, POTS is a medical abbreviation for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Question, are you familiar what POTS is? Answer, I've heard of it, yes. Question, can you give us a brief definition of what POTS is? Answer, my understanding is that POTS is a condition of the nervous system in which a patient may have an unusually elevated heart rate. Question, okay, generally, this past medical history section, do you see where I'm looking? Answer, I do. Question, who provides the information that goes into the section? Answer, in an ideal situation, the patient reports this themselves. Question, does it indicate in this section who relayed to medical staff on July 31st at 7:44 a.m. the past history for Mackenzie Shirilla was POTS? Answer, the patient's mother provided this information to us. Question, Dr. Tseng, at any point in time through your review of the medical records, did you see that any of the staff at Metro Health Hospital while treating Mackenzie Shirilla consulted with the POTS specialist at any point in time? Answer, it does not appear from my review of the medical records that a POTS specialist was brought in to treat the patient during her hospital stay with us. Question, based off your review of the entirety of these records, she was not treated for this disease while she was staying at Metro Health. Answer, to the best of my understanding, that is correct. Question, was a cardiac specialist ever consulted with regards to this information that was provided by the mother? Answer, on my review of the records, I did not see a consultant to a cardiologist. Question, was there ever a referral or consult given by the hospital to consult with a neurologist with regards to this information? Answer, to the best of my review of the medical records, I did not see any consultation for neurology for this condition. Question, at no time during her stay was she treated for this disease or consulted, strike that, referred out to consult with any medical specialist with regards to this. Is that correct? Answer, to the best of my understanding, it appears we did not ask a specialist in POTS to see the patient during her hospital stay with us. Question, again, this information was provided to the hospital by Mackenzie Shirilla's mother. Is that correct? Answer, yes, that's what the medical records indicate. Question, thank you, Dr. Tseng. Down to the bottom where it says social history, do you see where I'm looking? Answer, I do. Question, if you could read for the record, what is social history listed there? Answer, denies tobacco, ethanol, and drug use. Question, when it says denies, what would be making this denial? Answer, it appears that we did ask the patient to provide us this information. Question, thank you. I'm drawing your attention to page 16. Do you see where I'm looking? Do you have page 16 in your possession? Answer, I do. Question, I'm going to start midway through where it says review of symptoms. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer, I do. Question, I'm going to jump down to where it says respiratory. Do you see where it says respiratory? Answer, I do. Question, can you read the results for Mackenzie Shirilla's respiratory system? Answer, respiratory, negative symptoms, no cough, hemoptysis, SOB, DOE, PND, wheezing. Question, Dr. Tseng, for the record, is this still at 7:44 a.m. on July 31st of 2022? Answer, that's what the medical records say, that's correct. Question, cardiovascular, could you please read the results for Mackenzie Shirilla's cardiovascular system at 7:44 a.m. on July 31st? Answer, negative symptoms, no CP, pressure, tightness, palpitations, orthopnea, PND, SOB, DOE, edema, HA, or vision change. Question. I'm going to skip gastrointestinal and genitourinary and skip to neurologic. Can you please read the neurologic results performed at 7:31 at 7:44 a.m.? Answer. Negative symptoms, no syncope, seizures, weakness, gait problems, burning pain, tremors, or memory loss. Question. Can you continue reading where it says negative? Answer. Negative, no arthritic pain, no joint swelling, no muscular weakness. Question. Next, psychiatric, please. Answer. Negative, no sleep disturbance, anxiety, memory loss, disorientation, inattention, or feelings of depression. Question. I'm going to now draw your attention to basic labs. Can you just explain for the court what this section indicates? Answer. For our trauma evaluations, we have a standard panel of labs that we order for all Category 1 and Category 2 activations. The results appear to be listed here. Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to draw your attention now to the next page. Should be page 17. Do you have that in your possession? Answer. I do. Question. I'm going to draw your attention to the middle top of the page where it says ethanol serum. Do you see that? Answer. Yes. Question. What would that be a test for? Answer. Commonly known as blood alcohol level. Question. Was that test performed on Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. Yes. Question. For the record, date and time that is listed for the medical record at this point? Answer. Yes. Question. That is 7:31 at 7:44 a.m.? Answer. Yes. That's what's documented here. Question. What was the result of Mackenzie Shirilla's blood alcohol test? Answer. Less than 10, which is normal. Question. What is the detection for the alcohol in her blood? Answer. The value the laboratory returned was less than 10, which is normal for our laboratory. Question. And next to that, where it says reference range, what does it state? Answer. The reference range is non-detected. Question. I'm going to draw your attention to the next page, please. At the bottom of the page, it should say 360. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. I do. Question. I'm going to actually draw your attention all the way down to the bottom of the page. Do you see where it says mental status? Answer. I do. Question. Could you read what the results were for the mental status here for the scan? Answer. Mental status, oriented person, oriented place, oriented time, oriented event. Question. Thank you, Dr. Tseng. Next page, please. It should say 363 on the bottom of your page. Do you see where I'm looking? Answer. I do. Question. Dr. Tseng, what is depicted on page 363? Answer. This is an electrocardiogram. Question. What is an electrocardiogram? Answer. It is a measure of the electrical function of the heart. Question. And was an ECG performed on Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. It appears to be the case. Question. If you could look underneath to the date where it says July 31st, 2022. Answer. Yes. Question. And what time is listed there? Answer. 15:32. Question. What was the result of this EKG performed on Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer. Normal sinus rhythm with sinus arrhythmia, normal ECG, no previous ECGs available. Question. In layman's terms, would this mean her heart was functioning properly at 7:31 at 15:32? Answer. This implies the electrical function of the patient's heart was normal. Question. Dr. Tseng, I'm going to draw your attention to the next page briefly. For the record, what is this? Answer. This is a certification of medical records from Marsha Martin, who is the supervisor in the Health Information Management Department within the Metro Health System. Question. Who are the certified medical records of? Answer. These are for Mackenzie Shirilla, MRN number redacted. Question. What is the date of the set of medical records? Answer. August 30th, 2022. Question. For the record, what was the medical record number the same as the first certification sheet that you read? Answer. It is. Question. Doctor, why would there be two separate certification sheets for a patient? Answer. My understanding is the hospital bylaws require a separate certification for every instance that medical records are sought. Since these were sought on two separate dates, two separate sheets would have to be provided. Question. Dr. Tseng, the last page that you have, I believe, is page 47. Do you see where I'm looking at page 47? Answer. I do. Question. If you could read for the record where it says consults by Koshar Matthew, what is the date and time this note is created in the medical record? Answer. It appears to be 8/15/2022 at 2:15 p.m. Question. I'm going to have you read starting, do you see where it says patient stated she would be interested? It's the second line all the way to the right. Answer. I do see that. Question. Could you please read that? Answer. Patient stated she would be interested to attempt coloring, then declined due to focus on her grief. Patient then became tearful, processing heavy loss and depression since her accident. Patient Patient shared feelings of grief, guilt, and shame. Patient stated she, quote, wanted to die and that it was her fault for killing her boyfriend. Question. That's fine. That's good. Are these records fair and accurate depictions of the records that you have reviewed pertaining to Mackenzie Shirilla for this case? Answer. I believe that these medical records represent our best effort to be accurate as to what happened and the things we did to treat the patient. Question. Dr. Tseng, just to make it clear for the court, prior to Mackenzie Shirilla entering into the trauma bay that day, you don't have any firsthand knowledge of what happened prior to her entering there. Answer. I do not. And that is all for direct. So now it will go to cross. Question. Doctor, my name is Jim McDonald. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If you don't understand the question, just ask me to repeat or rephrase it. Fair enough? Answer. Fair enough. Question. All right. You don't have any independent recollection of your treatment of Mackenzie Shirilla, correct? Answer. I do not. Question. Okay, so this is just basically reviewing these records and telling us what the records say. Answer. That is correct. Question. Some of these things in the records you didn't have any part in playing, right? Answer. There are many things in these records that I did not enter myself. Question. Okay, and you just said and read that Mackenzie said it was her fault, correct? Answer. I did read those words. Question. That's what it says. It didn't say she purposely killed someone, did it? Answer. Those words do not appear in that note. Question. And whatever those words were, you weren't there to hear them. Answer. That is correct. Question. And you don't know who it is, correct? Answer. I don't know what is. Question. Question. Do you know the name of the person that made those notes? Answer. It's listed here as Matthew Koshar, who appears to be the heart therapist. Question. You do not know him? Question. You do not know him? Answer. That is correct. I do not know him personally. Question. We previously you talked about a blood ox. Hers was 98? Answer. That's correct. Question. The normal range is 98 to 100? Answer. I would actually expect 99 to 100. Question. 99 to 100. Okay. What would you think about a blood ox of 82? Answer. That could be abnormally low. Question. Pardon? Answer. That could be abnormally low. Question. You just said 99 to 100 is normal, right? Answer. That is correct. Question. Wouldn't 82 for sure be abnormal? Answer. There are some patients who have pre-existing medical conditions that might render an oxygen level of 82 to be normal. Question. But not most, correct? Answer. I would not expect 82 to be normal for most individuals. Question. If someone had a blood ox of 82, what would this indicate to you? Answer. That would suggest that the level of oxygen in their bloodstream was abnormally low. Question. What would the effects of that be upon someone? Answer. Abnormally low levels of oxygen in someone's blood would likely have a negative effect upon virtually all the tissues in that patient's body. Question. And you talked about POTS, right? Answer. I did read those words, yes. Question. And being a doctor, you're familiar with POTS, correct? Answer. I'm familiar with POTS. Question. Familiar, right? Answer. But not an expert. Question. What are some of the effects that someone would suffer if they had the condition of POTS? Answer. My understanding from review of the literature is that patients with POTS may experience unusually high heart rates, may also experience a number of neurological symptoms such as dizziness or headache. Question. Or what? Answer. Headache. Question. Would they lose consciousness? Answer. I'm actually not sure about that. I would hesitate to assert one way or another in this court. Question. Are those the only effects that you are aware of from someone who suffers from POTS? Answer. No, my understanding is that there could be many other symptoms. Question. Okay, if you could list those, I would appreciate it. Answer. Well, I listed dizziness. Question. Yes. Answer. And headache. Question. Yes. Answer. An abnormally high heart rate. And question. Yes. Answer. I think not being an expert, I would hesitate to continue delineating symptoms. Question. You testified that Mackenzie did not remember that event. That was stated in the records, right? Answer. The records indicate that the patient said she did not recall what happened. Question. If someone was involved in a severe motor vehicle accident, it's not unusual for that person to not remember the events leading up to the actual crash. Answer. It is not unusual for patients to tell us that, yes. Question. And that happens frequently, right? Answer. It is not unusual for patients to tell us that. time out real quick. So I kind of like that, not like, but I kind of think she's saying here it's not unusual for patients to tell us that. Meaning, yeah, they may say that, but it doesn't make it true. That's my takeaway, at least. Question. So you wouldn't find it unusual that somebody would say, I don't remember the event. Answer. I would not find it unusual. Question. Okay, the accident occurred at 5:36 a.m. and you saw the patient starting at 7:44, I think. Answer. That's when the medical records for us appear to begin. Question. That's a little more than 2 hours, right? Answer. Yes. Question. If someone had suffered a seizure, they could have been recovered within 2 hours, right? Answer. I think that's possible. Question. Okay, if someone had a mini stroke within 2 hours, they could be normal again, right? Answer. I believe that's possible. And then Mr. McDonald has no further questions, so it's going to go back to redirect, but the state has nothing for that. Thereupon, this witness was excused. Okay, and next up is Michelle Ruminski, who works for the BMV. So let's get to this next. I'm pretty sure this is a short one. And this will be the prosecution's direct examination. Question. Good morning. Would you please state and spell your name for the record? Answer. Michelle Ruminski, Michelle, Ruminski, Ruminski. And again, sorry if I'm not saying that correctly because I'm not that great at pronouncing things, so sorry. Question. Where are you employed? Answer. The Department of Public Safety, Bureau of Motor Vehicles, Investigation Section. Question. What are your duties in your job? Answer. I'm a BMV investigator, so I investigate title fraud, identity theft, dealership violations, things like that, and assisting law enforcement agencies. Question. In your capacity as an investigator, do you have access to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles stored records? Answer. Yes. Question. Would you also have access to records involving applications for driver's license? Answer. I do. Question. Did there come a point where investigators from Strongsville Police Department asked you to locate some records for them? Answer. Yes. Question. Can you tell us about that? Answer. I was requested to access records, which I'm entitled to do so. I access records and certify them for a Strongsville officer and drop them off. Question. Okay, would you recognize the records that you provided to the Strongsville police if you saw them in court? Answer. Yes. And then they approach. Question. These are 51 through 54. Would you take a look at these, please? Once you've examined those, let me know if you recognize them. Answer. I do recognize them. Question. Thank you. Turning first to the document titled Exhibit 51. What is this document? Answer. That is an application for identification card. Question. What is on the first page of Exhibit 51? Answer. The first page is my certification, the records request certification. I believe this is the one they're referring to. There are, I believe, two, but based on context clues, I believe this is one they're referring to as Exhibit 51. So let's go back to that. Question. What is on the first page of Exhibit 51? Answer. The first page is my certification, the records request certification, which I believe is this page over here. Question. Is the document that you have on the witness stand the same as I'm showing the court? Answer. Yes, it is. Question. Okay, so the first page is the certification. And what is on page 2 of Exhibit 51? Answer. That is the application for identification card. This is the official record kept in the BMV database, BMV 2002. Okay, that's what the file's labeled. Question. Does it bear the name of the person who made the application? Answer. That's correct. Question. What is the name of that person? Answer. Mackenzie Shirilla. Question. Does it list the date the application was made? Answer. Yes. Question. What was the date? Answer. Driver's license ID issue date was 9/18/2019. Okay, so this is not the right one. But this one. Okay. I don't think I have that one. I wasn't able to find that one. I just saw these two other ones, so I don't think that one's included, but all right. Question. Does it bear the signature of the person who the license was issued to? Answer. The applicant's signature is to the far left. Question. Are there additional names on this exhibit besides that of the applicant? Answer. There is a cosigner signature. Question. Who is that? Answer. The name recorded is listed as Natalie Shannon Shirilla. Question. Turning to Exhibit 52, what is that? Answer, that is the records request certification. Question, on page 2? Answer, the application for temporary permit. Question, was there a permit issued? Answer, the temporary permit ID number, blah, blah, blah. Question, what date was the permit issued? Answer, ID date, October 7th, 2020. Question, was it signed by the applicant? Answer, applicant signature is on the far left. Question, and who is the applicant in this one? Answer, Mackenzie Shirilla. Question, is it also signed by the cosigner? Answer, there is that cosigner name of Natalie Shannon Shirilla. Question, there are on this exhibit additional information. What does the information contain in the body of this exhibit? Answer, do you want me to read all of the items? Question, instead of reading it, I wonder if you could tell us specifically what this information is for. Answer, these are status questions. Question, the person who has issued the permit has to attest to these things before a permit is issued to them, correct? Answer, so the signature verifies this is basically kept in the normal course of business that the signature attests to those questions. Question, very fine. What are the attestations on this exhibit? And again, I don't think we have this one either because I think there was 4 in total and I only have 2. Answers. So please review carefully for the restrictions for your temporary instruction permit identification card as outlined in the Digest of Motor Vehicle Law. Anatomical donor, yes. Upon my death, I make an anatomical gift of my organs, tissues, and eyes for which purpose authorized by law. I do have a current driver's license or ID card for Ohio, ID number expiration 8/2 of 2023. I do not have driving privileges that are suspended or revoked or canceled or otherwise disqualified or subject to an out-of-service order in this state or any other state. I do not have a pending citation for any violation of any motor vehicle law or ordinance in this state or any other state. I do not have any condition that results in episodic impairment of consciousness or loss of muscular control. I do not have a physical or mental condition that prevents me from exercising reasonable and ordinary control of a motor vehicle. I am not chemically dependent on alcohol or a drug of abuse or currently using alcohol or drug of abuse. Question, then there is also a warning there? Answer, yes, there is. Question, what is the warning to the person? Answer, warning, applicant giving false information is subject to prosecution under ORC section 2921.13, application information and signature captured electronically. Question, I will ask you to turn to the next exhibit, which is States Exhibit 53. Identify that, please. Answer, the records request certification. Question, what is on page 2? Answer, application for driver's license. Question, okay, and what is the issue date on the application? Answer, the driver's license issue date is October 21st, 2022. So I believe that's the one I have here. So this one is after the crash. And then the one from here was the year before, so 4/22/21. And this is one that Natalie co-signed on right here. And I do not have a condition that results in episodic impairment of consciousness or loss of muscular control. And after the crash, same thing. I do not have a condition that results in episodic impairment of consciousness or loss of muscular control. And in the last video I just did, I went over how you do have to report this. Ohio does require you to report any condition that could affect your ability to drive. It doesn't mean you can't drive, but you do have to report it on your license. So Natalie in those jail calls saying that you don't have to report epilepsy, as you absolutely do. And then I'll get into more on the end here. I'll just go back to the transcript for now. Question, who is the person the license is issued to? Answer, Mackenzie Shirilla. Question, is that signed by Mackenzie Shirilla? Answer, the applicant's signature is captured on the left. Question, does this exhibit contain the same attestations as the previous one? Answer, I could read them. Question, I would just like you to specifically read the ones, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ones. Answer, I do not have a pending citation for a violation of any motor vehicles, law, or ordinance in the state or any other. I do not have a condition that results in episodic impairment of consciousness or loss of muscular control. Do you want me to go on? Question, the next one, please. Answer, I do not have a physical or mental condition that prevents me from exercising reasonable and ordinary control of a motor vehicle. And then the court says, can I interrupt for a minute? And okay, they just wanted spectator to turn their phone off. Question, States Exhibit 54. What is this exhibit? Answer, the record request certification. Question, and second page, answer, the application for driver's license. Question, who is the applicant? Answer, Mackenzie Shirilla. Question, what is the date the driver's license was issued? Answer, April 22nd, 2021. Okay, so that is this one here. Question, does it have the same attestations? Answer, do you want me to read the same questions? Question, you do not need to read them, just answer if they are the same. Answer, yes. Question, is it your testimony that these records are kept in the ordinary course of business with the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles? Answer, yes. Okay, and then the state is done, so it's cross-examination by the defense. Question, my name is Jim McDonald. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If at any time you don't understand the question, ask me to repeat or rephrase. Fair enough? Answer, sure. Question, you need a driver's license to drive, right? Answer, yes. Question, and you could even be driving, have a driver's license, and not have it on you and be charged with the crime of failure to display, right? Answer, I'm not law enforcement. Question, you're not, but in addition to driving, you need a driver's license for a lot of other things, right? Answer, it's required. And hang on, I do want to pause there because he just said, and you could even be driving, have a driver's license, and not have it on you and be charged with the crime of failure to display. So Mackenzie did not have her license on her during the crash. She also did not have her license on her. She got in two different incidents in April in the same week. One was the hit skip where she allegedly hit the car and then took off, and they called in to report it. And the witnesses that called in to report that she hit their car said she took off going 60 miles an hour. And so they followed her, and they initially got out and looked at the car, and there was nothing, no damage to it. So they were just going to kind of be whatever about it. But when she just like took off, they decided, no, we're going to call the police. So they call the police, and I believe they had like a similar car to hers. It wasn't anything fancy or anything like terrible or anything like that. Well, they get Mackenzie to come to her parents' house because that's where the police show up at. And she just shows up, says she didn't hit anybody, and starts saying how, oh, I'm not doing this. They just want to do this insurance fraud bullshit and talking all this shit and saying, I'm not about to try to get this and have these people, these broke ass people do insurance fraud on me. Just being nasty and terrible. And it was a few days or within the same week of the event where she's driving, and allegedly the other car says she threw something at his car and flicked him off. And from the surveillance videos, we see that she was tailing him. Well, allegedly, after she throws something at his car and flicks him off, he turns around and follows her and then blocks her in at this restaurant and gets out of the car to confront her. Well, then she freaks out and goes to the police station and is crying how she's so scared, and I'm a little girl and he's a grown man and all this, but leaves out how she completely instigated the event. And then she and her mom decide to press charges on this guy, even though she was the one that started it, and she acts like she was the victim in the whole situation. I know Plunder has those up. I can't remember. I don't think I put those up because I think I was doing it in a later video. But yeah, those videos are out there where she had two of these driving incidents in 1 week, and she did not have her license on her for either one of those either. And she's lucky the police didn't even say anything to her about it. But I can see that kind of stuff does happen around here, but then they should have at least told her, like, hey, you need to have your license on you when you're driving. Because then this is the third one. She gets in this crash and she does not have her license on her again. So I just thought it was interesting that her lawyer was bringing up the you can get failure to present your license because she never had it on her. Oh, and with the hit skip, it's funny because when you look through her phone stuff and all her Snapchats, she was recording herself driving right before the call went in where they said she hit them. So she was recording herself driving and dancing while driving and had sunglasses on even though it was dark. It was like I think 8 o'clock at night and had sunglasses on. And they even said when she hit them that they looked in the rearview mirror and just saw her eyes like go big, and then she took off. So she claims she didn't hit them, but I don't know. I believe these other people. And for her to just go, "Oh, I'm not about to have these broke ass bitches try to come after me for some insurance fraud shit." And her dad asks her, "Were you on Albion Road?" And she's like, "Yeah." So how did these people call this in, get your license plate, and know you hit them, but and you were there, but you didn't hit them, and you just so happen to be recording yourself while dancing and driving with sunglasses on at night right before that? I'm gonna go with what they said. So she had those just two incidents in 1 week, and that was April. So that was just a few months before the crash. But anyways, I'll get back to the transcripts. Question: You're not, but in addition to driving, you need a driver's license for a lot of other things, right? Answer: It's required. Question: I'm saying other than driving. Like I voted yesterday. I needed it to vote, right? Answer: Or a state of Ohio ID possibly. Question: One of the two? Answer: I don't work at polls. Question: Lots of places where you want to go work require you to have a driver's license, right? Answer: Might. I'm not employed there. Question: You go to a bank. They ask you for two sets of ID. Driver's license as one of those? Answer: I don't. Question: You don't go to the bank, do you? Answer: I'm here to testify to the record. And sorry, let me just cut in there. I've been in banking for over 10 years, and yeah, you don't need two forms of ID unless you're going in there to open a bank account. Question: Actually, you're here to answer my questions, okay? Answer: Okay. Question: When you go to the bank, you need a driver's license. Answer: Okay. Question: Would you agree? Answer: I need a form of identification. Question: Usually two at a bank, right? No. Answer: I go to the ATM. Question: I mean, the bottom line is you need a driver's license for a lot of other things besides just driving, right? The court says if you don't know, you can say you don't know. Answer: I don't know. And then Mr. McDonald has no further questions, and the state has no redirect. She went and got a duplicate driver's license because her license she didn't have on her. It was at Dom's house, and Dom's mom was not letting her come in the house to get her stuff. She didn't want to go over there at all and didn't want anyone going over there. Mackenzie went and got a duplicate driver's license just 8 weeks after the crash. And yeah, she could have got a state ID if she, you know, wanted to. I have no problem with her just going and getting her driver's license 2 months after the crash because yeah, you would need that for some stuff. My problem is she was actually seen driving again. It was either 3 or 4 months after the crash, which she was in casts for a while and couldn't walk for a while. So basically, as soon as she could drive again, she was driving again. Despite, her trying to say on jail calls she had to be scared to be a driver again and this and that, but she was seen driving again. This is how Mackenzie and her mom kinda killed the whole POTS thing being used as a defense on their own before they were ever able to use it. You'll see later Mackenzie's mom is gonna get on the stand, and she's gonna say that she had no concerns about Mackenzie driving after the crash, and that she had driven in the car with her and felt safe and had no worries about Mackenzie driving again. That kinda kills what they wanted to later use as a defense with the POTS, because if you really thought that your daughter had this POTS incident, pass out behind the wheel, and 2 people died, 1, they they didn't report the POTS to the BMV before this happened, and like I said, you do have to report it. You have to report it if it could affect your ability to drive. So, not only could, at this point, when she gets the duplicate driver's license 2 months after the crash, if they really do believe that this was a POTS incident that caused this, it did affect her driving, and they still don't report that, and they don't report the crash where she just, you know, allegedly passed out behind the wheel and killed 2 people. That would have needed to be reported, and she wouldn't have been able to get her license again right away. She would have had to be medically evaluated first. As we just heard from the doctor, she did not see any POTS specialists or any specialists really of any kind while she was in the hospital. So her family clearly didn't think it was any type of medical thing, because what mother would just let her daughter not only get behind the wheel again, but give her a car to get behind the wheel again and say she has no problems and doesn't feel, and feel safe with her daughter driving again just 3 to 4 months after the crash when they think she passed out behind the wheel and ended 2 lives. Like, those things don't add up. That's part of what really killed her POTS defense, or trying to use a POTS defense. She again reported, I do not have a condition that results in episodic impairment of consciousness or loss of muscular control, and I do not have a physical or mental condition that prevents me from exercising reasonable and ordinary control of a motor vehicle. So right there, I mean, that kills it. That kills trying to use POTS as a defense. They obviously did not think that the POTS was a problem or that the POTS caused the crash because they just let her start driving again. And wouldn't you, if you thought you passed out behind the wheel and just killed the love of your life and a friend, wouldn't you go to a doctor and say, hey, I'm scared to drive again, or what do I need to do to be able to drive again to make sure it doesn't happen again? But nothing. She didn't see any kind of specialist on anything. And the doctor testified there was nothing neurological, nothing like with her heart. There was nothing there that could explain what happened. She was fine. Natalie and Mackenzie killed the POTS defense on their own when they went to the BMV right after her and got her license. And not only that, but she was driving again after that. Like, no, just no excuse for that. Next will be Mark Sargent, who did the forensic exam, which will go to show that there was nothing wrong with the car either. In order to use something as a defense, you have to have evidence to support it. You can't just throw stuff out there and be like, oh, well, anything's possible, so it could be. No, that doesn't work. You have to have actual evidence that supports it. So I've been asking as we go along, what do you think is Mackenzie's defense strategy? What is their defense? What are they using? Can you see where it's going? If you've seen some of my other videos, I've already spoiled it for you, and I'm sorry, but I'm curious to know, those that are watching that don't know what the defense strategy was at trial, what are you thinking it is as it goes along? What are you seeing? Since the trial wasn't televised, so many people are just going off of what they've seen online from what the Shirillas push out there or what the Mackenzie supporters push out there as possible defenses or reasonable doubt, when it's not even something that was brought up at trial because there was no evidence to support it. You can't just bring up theories. Those do not equal reasonable doubt. And so many people that I talk to that say she didn't get a fair trial can't even tell me what her defense was at trial because they didn't read the trial transcripts and the trial wasn't televised. How can you say she did not get a fair trial if you did not read the trial transcripts? And I'll talk about it a little more as we get further. But once you see all the evidence and everything that was brought in and argued at trial, I think it all starts to make a lot more sense on what he did and why he did what he did versus everyone trying to say he was just incompetent. A lot of the people that I've seen criticize him online or say, oh, he should have went with this strategy or he should have went with this, and they explain their strategy. Well, there's evidence that contradicts what they're saying. And if they actually had seen all the evidence and read the trial transcripts, that maybe they wouldn't be going ahead with the arguments they're saying now. It's all this Monday morning quarterbacking saying this lawyer was terrible, when I think once you see it all put together, you can see why he made most of the decisions that he made. Was he the best lawyer ever? No. But he also wasn't as incompetent as everyone tries to make him out to be. It comes down to legal strategy, and I think at the end of the day, when you look at everything, when you see all the evidence that existed and what he ended up arguing at trial, that he did what he could to protect his client. He knew his client wasn't walking out of there innocent. There may have been things that they wanted to use, but he had to make the decision to leave some of these things out, which may be hard to understand at first. But when you look at it as a whole and see that it would likely hurt her a lot more than it would help her, then you got to make those hard decisions to leave it out. But again, that's not incompetence, that's lawyer strategy. And just because everyone may not agree with that strategy doesn't make it incompetent or anything that rises to the level of ineffective counsel. All right. Thanks for sticking with me if you're still here, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.